The piano was playing. Victor Hale froze in the doorway of the abandoned mansion, his hand still gripping the rusted iron handle of the front door. The sound floated through the silent halls like a ghost breathing life into the dead house. One slow note, then another. His heart slammed violently in his chest. That melody. No, he whispered. Couldn't be. 5 years. 5 long years of silence, grief, and emptiness. And now the piano was playing again. Victor stepped inside slowly, the wooden floor creaking under his expensive shoes. Dust hung in the air like gray fog. The mansion had been locked for half a decade. Untouched. Forgotten. But the music was real. Soft. Careful. The exact melody his daughter used to play every evening. Victor's voice cracked in the empty hallway. "Emily?" The music stopped instantly. The silence that followed was even heavier than the sound. Victor stood there, barely breathing. His daughter had died 5 years ago. Or at least, that was what everyone believed. Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories filled with mystery and powerful twists, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this take time to create, and your support helps bring more powerful stories to life. Victor Hale had built one of the largest technology companies in the country. Newspapers called him ruthless. Competitors called him unstoppable. Investors called him brilliant. But none of those titles mattered to him, because at home he was just a father. Emily Hale was 16 when the world fell apart. She was the opposite of her father in every way. While Victor lived in meetings, negotiations, and numbers, Emily lived in music. The grand piano in the mansion's music room was her sanctuary. Every evening she played, and every evening Victor listened. Sometimes he would sit quietly in the doorway while she practiced. Sometimes she would stop halfway through a song and grin at him. "Dad, you're staring again." "I'm not staring," Victor would say. "I'm appreciating. You don't even understand music. I understand that my daughter is brilliant." Emily would roll her eyes and laugh before continuing to play. That laugh once filled the mansion. Now the mansion felt like a tomb. Victor slowly walked deeper into the house. The sound had come from the music room. There was no doubt about it. His chest tightened as memories clawed their way back. 5 years ago, everything changed in one single night. Emily had asked to visit a friend who lived outside the city. Victor had been buried in work that day. "Just take the driver," he told her while signing documents at the dining table. "Be back before 10. Emily leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Relax, Dad. I'm 16, not 6. That was the last time he saw her alive. Or so he thought. The car never reached its destination. Police reports later explained that the vehicle lost control on a mountain road during heavy rain, crashed through the barrier, and plunged into a ravine. By the time rescue teams arrived, the car had already burned. The fire destroyed almost everything. The authorities told Victor the worst possible news. There were no survivors. They never recovered Emily's body clearly enough to identify it. But the investigators were certain. Victor remembered the police officer speaking softly. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Hale." Those words shattered his world. After the funeral, Victor stopped visiting the mansion. Every hallway echoed with memories of Emily's laughter. Every room reminded him of something he had lost forever. So he left. He moved into a penthouse in the city and buried himself in work. The mansion was locked and forgotten. Until now. Victor had finally returned to sell the property. His lawyer insisted it was time. "You can't hold on to empty buildings forever," the lawyer told him during a meeting 2 weeks earlier. Victor stared out the window. "It's not empty, Victor. No one has lived there for 5 years." Victor didn't answer. But eventually he agreed. And now he stood inside the mansion again for the first time since the accident. The piano melody he had heard minutes ago still echoed in his mind. His pulse quickened as he reached the hallway leading to the music room. The door stood slightly open. Victor pushed it slowly. The room was dim, lit only by pale moonlight filtering through tall windows. The grand piano sat exactly where Emily had left it. Closed. Silent. Victor walked toward it carefully. His fingers trembled as he touched the lid. Dust coated the surface. No one had played this piano in years. Or had they? Victor swallowed hard. I heard it, he muttered to himself. I know I did. A sudden noise came from somewhere upstairs. A faint thump. Victor's head snapped upward. Hello? No answer. His voice grew louder. Is someone here? Silence. The rational part of his mind tried to explain it away. Maybe a trespasser. Maybe someone had broken into the abandoned house. But the melody, that melody was too specific. Emily had written part of it herself. Victor was certain. Another sound echoed from the upper floor. Footsteps. Light. Careful. Victor's heart began pounding. Hey! He shouted. Who's there? The footsteps stopped instantly. Victor rushed toward the staircase. Every step felt heavier than the last. His chest filled with dread. And something else. Hope. Impossible hope. Halfway up the stairs, he called out again. Listen. If someone is inside this house, you need to come out now. Still nothing. Victor reached the second floor. The hallway stretched into darkness. Doors lined both sides. One of them creaked slowly. Victor turned his head sharply. Who's there? For a moment, he thought he saw movement at the far end of the corridor. A shadow slipping around the corner. Victor's voice rose with urgency. Stop! But whoever it was had already disappeared. Victor hurried down the hallway. His breathing was uneven now. Wait! He shouted. I'm not going to hurt you. He reached the corner and froze, because the hallway beyond was empty. No footsteps, no sound, nothing. Victor ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady himself. This is ridiculous, he muttered. But deep inside, a strange feeling had already begun growing. Something was wrong, very wrong, because someone had been inside this house. And whoever it was had been playing Emily's piano. And somewhere in the silent mansion, something moved again. Soft, careful. Watching him, Victor stood in the hallway listening carefully. The mansion was silent again, but it was no longer the dead silence he remembered. Now it felt like someone was hiding inside the walls, breathing, watching, waiting. Come out, Victor said firmly. I know someone is here. No answer. He walked slowly down the corridor, opening doors one by one. The first room was empty. The second room was empty. The third room still had furniture covered in white sheets. Dust exploded into the air when he pulled one of them down. Nothing. Victor exhaled sharply. Maybe you're losing your mind, he muttered to himself. 5 years of grief could do that to a man. He had heard stories about people imagining things when they returned to places filled with memories. But then it happened again. One piano note. Soft. Clear. Victor spun around instantly. The sound had come from downstairs. His heart nearly stopped. No, 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 no. He rushed toward the staircase. The note came again. Then the melody continued. Slow, gentle, beautiful. Victor's breathing turned ragged as he ran down the stairs. That's impossible, he whispered, because the song playing downstairs was not just Emily's favorite song. It was a song she had been writing herself. A song no one else knew. Victor reached the music room doorway, and this time, the piano was open. Someone was sitting there. Victor froze. The figure had long dark hair, small shoulders, thin fingers moving across the keys. The girl played carefully, like someone who had practiced the song thousands of times. Victor's voice trembled. Emily? The piano stopped. The girl's hands froze on the keys. Slowly, she turned. Victor felt the air leave his lungs. The girl staring back at him had Emily's eyes. The same face, but older. 5 years older. Victor stumbled forward like a man losing control of gravity. No, he whispered. The girl stood up slowly. She stared at him, confused, frightened. Victor's voice broke. Emily, is that you? The girl's lips parted slightly. You came back. Victor stopped moving. Those words hit him like lightning. You know me? He asked softly. The girl blinked. Her voice trembled. You're my dad. Victor's knees nearly gave out. He grabbed the side of the piano to steady himself. "I thought you were dead," he said, barely able to speak. The girl shook her head slowly. "I thought you left me." Victor looked at her in shock. "What?" Her voice grew emotional. "You never came back." Victor stared at her, struggling to understand what she meant. "Emily, there was an accident. The car." "I know," she said quietly, her eyes filled with tears. "I remember the accident." Victor leaned closer. "What happened?" Emily took a shaky breath. "The car crashed, just like they told you." Victor nodded slowly. "But someone pulled me out," she continued. Victor frowned. "Someone saved you?" Emily hesitated. "Yes. But they didn't take me to a hospital." Victor's stomach tightened. "Where did they take you?" Emily pointed toward the far end of the mansion. "There." Victor followed her finger. "The old east wing." His heart skipped a beat. "That part of the house has been locked for years." Emily nodded. "I know." Victor's voice grew tense. "Emily, who took you there?" Her answer came slowly. "Mr. Carter." Victor felt cold all over. Daniel Carter, his estate manager. The man who had worked for him for over 15 years. The man Victor trusted with everything. "That's not possible," Victor said immediately. Emily shook her head again. "He pulled me out of the car before it caught fire." Victor's mind raced. "But why?" Emily's voice cracked. "He said the accident was supposed to kill both of us." Victor's eyes widened. "What?" Emily looked down. "He said someone paid him to make sure we died." Victor felt his heart pounding harder than ever. "Did he say who?" Emily nodded slowly. "Yes." Victor stepped closer. "Who?" Before she could answer, a slow clap echoed from the doorway. Victor turned sharply. Daniel Carter stood there, his expression calm, almost amused. "Well," Carter said with a small smile, "this reunion is emotional." Victor's voice exploded with anger. "Carter!" Emily immediately stepped behind her father. Carter leaned casually against the doorframe. "I was wondering when you'd finally return, Victor." Victor's fists clenched. "You kidnapped my daughter." Carter shrugged. "Technically, I saved her first." Victor's voice shook with rage. "You locked her in this house for 5 years." Carter sighed. "You make it sound cruel." "It was cruel." Emily gripped Victor's arm. Carter looked at her briefly. "I made sure she had food, education, music. She wasn't exactly suffering." Victor's eyes burned with fury. "You destroyed her life." Carter tilted his head. "No, I preserved it." Victor stepped forward. "Why?" Carter smiled faintly. "Because you were never supposed to survive that accident either." Victor stopped moving. "What did you say?" Carter's eyes darkened. "The crash was meant to kill both of you." Victor's voice dropped to a whisper. "Who hired you?" Carter chuckled. "You still haven't figured it out?" Victor's chest tightened. Carter continued calmly. "Your business empire has many enemies, Victor. But only one person stood to gain everything from your death." Victor's mind suddenly connected the dots. His business partner. The man who had taken temporary control of the company after Emily's death. Victor's voice was cold now. "Richard Lawson." Carter smiled wider. "Congratulations." Emily gasped softly. Victor's eyes filled with fury. "He paid you to kill us?" Carter nodded. "The original plan was simple. A tragic accident. The billionaire and his daughter gone. Lawson becomes the grieving partner who takes over the company." Victor's voice shook. "But Emily survived." Carter glanced at her again. "Yes, and that created complications." Victor stepped closer. "So you hid her?" Carter nodded. "For leverage." Victor's voice dropped dangerously low. "You kept my daughter prisoner for 5 years." Carter's smile faded. "I kept her alive." Victor's fists tightened. "And now?" Carter pushed himself away from the doorframe slowly. "Now that you're here, the situation becomes interesting." Emily whispered behind Victor. "Dad, he has a gun." Victor's blood ran cold. Carter slowly pulled the weapon from his coat. The room went silent. Carter looked at both of them calmly. I was hoping this moment would never come. Victor's voice was steady despite the fear. What are you planning to do? Carter sighed. The same thing I was paid to do 5 years ago. He raised the gun. Finish the job. Victor stepped slightly in front of Emily. Stay behind me, he whispered. Emily grabbed his arm tightly. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't move away. Daniel Carter held the gun steadily, his expression calm in a way that made the moment even more terrifying. Victor's voice was controlled, but the anger beneath it was obvious. You really think you're walking out of this house after everything you've done? Carter shrugged slightly. I walked out 5 years ago. This isn't very different. Emily's voice shook behind Victor. Why did you keep me here? Carter glanced at her. For insurance. That's not an answer, Victor snapped. Carter sighed like a man tired of explaining something simple. Your father built an empire that made a lot of powerful people very rich and very jealous. Richard Lawson wanted control of the company, but he needed Victor out of the way. Victor stared at him with disgust. So he hired you? Yes. And you agreed. Carter's tone stayed neutral. Money can be persuasive. Victor took a slow step forward. You staged the crash. Carter nodded. The road was already dangerous. A little tampering with the car brakes, and the rain did the rest. Emily's voice cracked. You were supposed to kill me too. Carter looked at her without emotion. That was the agreement. Victor's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. But you didn't. Carter's eyes narrowed slightly. Because plans changed. Victor let out a cold breath. You realized a living daughter was more useful than a dead one. Carter smiled faintly. You're a smart man, Victor. Emily's voice trembled again. You locked me in that wing. I protected you, Carter corrected. You kept me prisoner. Carter tilted his head. Yet here you are. Alive. Victor's patience snapped. You stole 5 years of her life. The words echoed through the room. For the first time, Carter's calm expression flickered. Victor continued, his voice rising with emotion. She spent birthdays alone, holidays alone, wondering why her father abandoned her. Emily's grip on Victor tightened. Carter looked irritated now. You're making this unnecessarily dramatic. Victor laughed bitterly. Dramatic? You kidnapped a child. Carter raised the gun slightly higher. Enough. The room fell silent. Carter's voice hardened. I didn't come here for a debate. Victor stared directly into his eyes. You won't shoot. Carter raised an eyebrow. Oh. Victor nodded slowly. If you wanted us dead, you would have done it the moment I walked in. Carter's smile returned slightly. You've always been good at reading people. Victor stepped closer again. So what's the real plan? Carter sighed. Lawson doesn't know Emily is alive. Victor frowned. And if you disappear tonight, and she disappears with you, the story remains perfect. Emily whispered, horrified. You're going to kill us. Carter shrugged. That was always the deal. Victor shook his head slowly. No. Carter narrowed his eyes. No. Victor's voice was steady now. You've been hiding in this house for years. No one knows you're here. Carter said nothing. Victor continued. And the moment the police start investigating, you'll be the first suspect. Carter smirked. Only if there are witnesses. Victor glanced at Emily. Emily. She understood instantly. Her voice rose loudly. Help. Someone help us. Carter's smile vanished. Stop. Emily screamed even louder. Help. Victor shouted too. Help. Call the police. Carter's expression twisted with anger. Shut up. But Emily didn't stop. 5 years of fear exploded out of her. Help. Someone. The gun fired. The sound exploded through the mansion. Emily screamed. Victor stumbled backward. For a moment, everything felt frozen in time. Carter stared at the gun in his hand. Victor looked down slowly. The bullet had hit the grand piano beside him. Splinters of wood covered the floor. Victor looked back up at Carter. "You missed." Carter's jaw tightened. That was a warning. Victor suddenly lunged forward. Emily gasped. Victor slammed into Carter with everything he had. The gun fired again. The shot hit the ceiling. Carter staggered backward. The weapon fell from his hand and slid across the floor. Emily rushed forward and kicked it away. Carter tried to push Victor off, but Victor tackled him to the ground. 5 years of grief, rage, and heartbreak exploded out of him. "You took my daughter," Victor shouted as he pinned Carter down. Carter struggled, but Victor was stronger than he expected. Emily grabbed the gun from the floor and backed away, pointing it at Carter with shaking hands. "Don't move," she cried. Carter froze. Victor held him firmly against the ground. For the first time, the estate manager looked nervous. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Emily's eyes widened. "Dad? The police." Victor looked at Carter with cold satisfaction. "You should have left when you had the chance." Carter said nothing. Minutes later, flashing lights filled the mansion windows. Police officers rushed inside. "Drop the weapon." Emily immediately placed the gun on the floor and raised her hands. Victor stood up slowly while officers grabbed Carter and forced his hands behind his back. One officer looked between Victor and Emily in confusion. "What happened here?" Victor turned toward his daughter. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. Victor pulled her into a tight embrace. For the first time in 5 years, he was holding his daughter again. Emily's voice broke. "I kept playing the piano every night." Victor held her tighter. "Why?" She wiped her tears. "Because I hoped, one day, you'd come back and hear it." Victor closed his eyes. "I'm sorry it took me so long." Police officers dragged Carter out of the room. As he passed them, he looked back once. But Victor didn't care anymore, because the nightmare was finally over. Emily looked up at him and whispered softly, "You came back." Victor smiled through tears. "I never stopped looking for you." The mansion was no longer silent, and for the first time in 5 years, the house was finally alive again. If this story kept you hooked until the end, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below what you would have done if you were in Victor's place.